with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moni wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and honored that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Victoria Smith. She's returning to the show to celebrate Priscilla and Tux. Before we invite Victoria into the studio, we want to invite you and encourage you to visit clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that is very near and dear to my heart and would love for you to check it out. Clowns Without Borders, they exist because every child deserves to laugh. They're a nonprofit group that uses live performances to bring joy, laughter, and human connection to global communities in crisis. As you may know, I just returned from a 3-week tour of the beautiful nation of El Salvador. And while we were there, me and my fellow artists performed for families in migrant centers, folks who were internally displaced by violence in their communities and who had been affected by violence in the past. I loved it being part of it. We know that we had a huge impact on the families that we performed for. The smiles that we encountered were absolutely wonderful and filled my heart with joy. I know that you would be interested in learning more about this group and learning more about how you can become part of this wonderful group. So check it out today, please. clownswithoutborders.org. Returning to the show to celebrate her brand new book. It's called Priscilla and Tux. Please welcome back Victoria Smith. Hey, Victoria, how are you?
I am fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Delighted to have you back. We're real excited. This is the third book in your Tuxedo Baby series. Am I right?
You are so correct.
Yeah. Tell us all about it.
Well, let me just kind of piggyback first on who Tuxedo Baby is.
Sure.
In the first book, it's he is a Magellanic penguin from Chile, and he is adopted by cherry-head conure parrots that live in Peru. And they bring him home, and they show him how to do things. They show him how to do the chores, how to go to school, and the basic things. And he learns how to be really, as he already was, a really good penguin. Then he, and that particular story is mainly about unconditional love, trying to, always try, but know your limitations. And of course, he wants to be like his adopted parents and fly. And of course he can't because he's a penguin. So that's where, the resilience and just trying to accept who you are. In the second book, Tuxedo Baby and his annoying cousins, they come to visit and, they're mischievous. They are so naughty. And he just doesn't know what to do because he's so used to being such a good penguin, but they just pull him in different directions, and he's beside himself because he's getting himself in trouble. So this story is more about consequences, knowing right from wrong, and the overall impression is the choices that you make, trying to do positive resolution. How we're going to, how am I going to get out of this without hurting anybody's feelings and getting in more trouble? And also in all my books, I also have curriculum at the end for teachers and homeschoolers so they can have those discussions and talk about, well, what would you do, if your cousins came over and they started doing this? So they're trying for them to come up with a positive solution. When I go into classrooms, I ask that question. I said, now remember, he's really good. So you can't say, he should do this and that. Think of how he would think. In the third book, this book is truly sibling love. Instead of rivalry, we have love. And now Tuxedo Baby is no longer wanting to be called Baby because he has a sister. He wants to be called Tux. And so that's why it's called Priscilla and Tux. Brothers are caring. He goes to school. He's older now, and he takes her on his shoulder. So he waddles to school as she's on her shoulder. And the kids in school absolutely adore Tux. It's Priscilla's students, her classmates. And they always ask him, tell me a joke, tell me a joke. So this book has a lot of corny jokes in it, and the kids love it. They eat it up. And she has a show and tell at school, and all the other kids are bringing in all kinds of stuff. And she's just like beside herself. What am I going to bring for the show and tell? So it kind of goes with the day of the week. Like on Monday, so-and-so does this. On Tuesday, and so hers is on Friday, the last day. And Thursday, she's still thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And the illustrator in the book has done such a great job showing the room kind of like in a disarray because she's still looking. And she finally comes upon and says, you know what, I'll just bring in a map of joy. That's for my adopted brothers from Tux. And then it hits her. She says she goes down to her parents who are on the couch, and she flies down there and she says to them, that she wants, what about taking Tux to school? And they thought, of course, that's a great idea. So what she does is she hides him outside the classroom. And when it's her turn, she brings him in. Of course, the teacher is excited. The kids are excited. He tells more jokes, and they think that she's so lucky. And the overall point for that story is sometimes the very thing that you've been looking for has been there all this time. It's right under your nose. So that's Priscilla and Tux in a nutshell.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we certainly celebrate sibling love and family relationships, and all sorts of families, not only our blood families, but also the family, that we choose, either through adoption or through close friendships. So this is a great kind of next step in Tux's story.
Yes. Yeah. I'm contemplating, although I have so many other stories that I want to write, I'm contemplating putting this in the, just off for a while. I did have in one of my reviews, someone said that they were hoping that there'd be another book about the cousins, have them come back for another visit. And I thought, so you get your ideas from other people and what they're asking for. Someone even said maybe for Christmas, to have Christmas at home. What would that be like? And so there are still lots of ideas, and that's definitely, I love the character. I think he's turned into much of what I'm about, which is role modeling. And I think it's important the way he's grown up, and he's, trying to make those choices for knowing that there are other things he could do, but making those choices in a positive way. So now he's not only doing that, but he's role modeling for Priscilla. And where did he get that from? From his parents. And so I can see it taking off and doing more with it. I'm not sure right now. I think I have some other, I have so many stories that I want to, get out there.
That is always one of the challenges, I think, being an author, is that there are so many ideas. Jane Yolen, who is the author of over 400 traditionally published books, was on the podcast, and she said that, every time she walks out of the house, that she's surrounded by inspiration and ideas. And there are so many stories out there, and I guess for you, it is a challenge. How are you managing that whole? Are you finding different ways to manage that whole? What should I write next? And I want to explore this, but I don't have the time, and people want more Tux. And what should I do?
It's funny that you say that, because I have two stories that I could do next. And it's a toss between, do I want to do this one, which is mainly about bullying, or do I want to go just with, it's just a fun story. And it's more like a superhero kind of story, but again, all my stories involve animals. So I have a box turtle named Swimmy. And so I could see that one might just be fun. Just do something like fun and let that one go. And that story already has been written. And years ago when I was in the classroom, the kids and I came up with a story and I just embellished it. And so it's something that I've kind of put off. And I thought, yeah, that would be kind of a fun one, just a fun one. And of course, the turtle has wings. And so it's just fun. And I love fiction because you can be as creative as you want to be. And you can use your imagination. And that's the part I love about writing.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I'm kind of toying between the two because the other one is your non-traditional, because I'm talking about succulent plants. And that being a society of themselves, a community in themselves, and having feelings, and what they, and it's kind of based on the ugly duckling story, without being the ugly duckling story, and how that came about. So there's two different ways that I can go, and yes, it is hard to make that decision, but I know come January, because I've given myself this, November, December to kind of take a break, although I'm really not taking a break because authors never take breaks. We have to then market things and we have to, make sure that other people know about your books. Mm-hmm. And the only way to do that is to go out and get it out there to the world. So, come January, I definitely will make that decision on what I'm going to do.
You mentioned earlier that, you, visit classrooms talking about Tux and Tux's different tales and relationships. Is visiting a classroom as an author, or how does visiting a classroom as an author differ from the times that you were in the classroom as a teacher?
Well, that's so funny because I've taught 29 years. And the classroom was just where I excelled. And now that I'm outside the classroom, I kind of come in. Oh, I'm so sorry. My dog is barking in the back. I've kind of, excelled in that. I'm kind of nervous walking in. Although I have to tell you, it is nice in that you come in, you read, the kids are excited, and you come in, you read, and they're excited to see you, and then you go. You almost feel like a grandmother, when you watch the kids and you can rough them all up and such, and then you leave it, and then the parents are like, "What just happened?" So, it is different, and I have to share this last weekend. I was in a Christmas boutique with my books, and this family came up. It was first it was a grandfather, and then it was the grandmother, and then this father was with the daughter. And this little girl, she's probably around 7 or 8 years old. And she's looking at the book. She says, wait a minute. I know these books. I know Tuxedo Baby. And it was like, oh my gosh. And I said, what, do you go to a school here in Alameda? And she said, yes. She goes, I go to Violin. I said, well, I was there. She goes, I remember you. And she was getting all excited. It was just so nice. And so that to me is like, wow, the highest honor that you can get. The kids remember you. They know the books and they were just happy. And then not a minute later, she just walked next door to the next person who was selling jewelry. Oh, look, this jewelry. Off she was. But for that moment, it was awesome. So I do like going into the classrooms, but it's just different. It's very different, but really, really wonderful when you do. After you finally do it, it's great. The kids love it, and they normally love the books. And I also like to bring in, for Tuxedo Baby, I have a very small kind of stuffed animal that I bring, and I set it on there as I'm reading it. And for Tuxedo Baby and the Annoying Cousins, I had a larger one. I said, oh, this is Cruz, which is the oldest of the naughty penguins, the cousins. And so now I've had because I could never find cherry head conures, as a stuffed animal. So I'm having one made. I'm really excited. And so next time I get to go in the classroom, when I bring this story, I have now something, I'll have Priscilla with me. And so that's being specially made. So I'm excited about that. Props are good.
Well, they are, and they're a lot of fun, and they can really grab attention. And how has the classroom changed? You mentioned that you taught for 29 years. My beautiful wife is also a former teacher. She taught for 34 years. How did you notice, or what kind of changes did you notice in education and in the classrooms in the decades that you were teaching?
For one, in the beginning, I had 36 students in my class. And I did that for 4. That's almost like 2 classes today. Mm-hmm. And that was, I was in a Catholic school, and that was interesting, but I didn't know any better. So 36 kids was just a charm. And then I moved to Idaho for a few years, and they had probably around 24, which was interesting. At that time, California, when we moved back, had done the 20-to-1 kind of measure. And so that was really so different, teaching 20 kids as opposed to 36 kids, because for me, having less children there's absolutely no reason why you don't, why you don't know each individual. You know what their needs are. You even know their family background. I mean, it was because there's only 20 of them, as opposed to, let's say, like I said, 36, where it's like, whoa, you're running kind of back and forth. So as far as the classrooms, being different, I think it's basically the teacher and that's in the classrooms that make it the same or make it unique. And I had the experience of not teaching straight out of college. I started my later life in my 40s, and I just had a whole different attitude. It was an attitude that I really wanted to be here, and I wanted to. I had a lot of friends that started right after college, their early 20s, and they were already burnt out by the time I would come because they were just so dragged down. And sometimes, between the administration and all the curriculum that they're forcing you to, put upon these kids, whether they're ready or not, whether they can read or not, it made it pretty difficult for many. And I don't know, I think because I was older and my attitude was one of, okay, math was not easy for me in the beginning, like for many people. So I wanted to make math just so, I wanted them to enjoy math. Mm-hmm. I wanted them to, so I think a lot of it, to answer your question, is how the teacher is in her own classroom. For me, with the kids, if they didn't get it, okay, then I didn't teach it right. I have to do it again and do it again until I see, everyone now understanding. And I think that a lot of times, and I think before I left in 2020, the administration was saying that, you have to teach to the test. You have to do this for the test, the test. And they weren't taking into consideration where those children's skills were. We wanted to bring them to where we could, if they weren't reading, to get them to a level where at least they could read some of the questions on the test. And the other thing is, I think what they have done is they have improved the tests somewhat, those state tests. They used to be so kids couldn't relate to some of the questions. For example, is there a portrait in your house that you like? Well, kids don't know what a portrait is, unless they've had someone say, this is a portrait of great grandma, whatever. And so they had to come in line to meet the needs of the kids. They had to come to where the kids could understand. And I think that hopefully, I don't know because I'm not in the classroom now, hopefully those things will change. But I think the teachers are the ones that are really responsible for how that classroom is. I think that the teacher, because you're the one in charge, and it takes you to make those changes. So when you're at those meetings and you see things, you have other teachers that agree with you. I mean, we have to be the voice for our kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned is that in book one of the things that Tuxedo Baby had to learn was his limitations. And I'm one of those guys who's always about, yeah, you can do it. You can do anything you want and all that kind of stuff. But I, as many people know, had a pretty serious injury back in February, and thankfully I'm recovered. And I just returned from a tour of El Salvador where I was performing with two amazing and very young and very energetic and athletic clowns. And wow, I wanted to do everything they were doing. But even if I hadn't had the injury, I don't know if this old body could have done those things. And so it was really important for me to know my limitations, and just talk about that a little bit, because like I said, before this tour, the idea of me being comfortable saying, that's just something I can't do right now. It was really important for me to be able to do on this tour, and it was never something that I thought I would be comfortable saying to myself.
Right. In the story, as based on the story for Tuxedo, of course, he wants to fly, and he tries and attempts to do all kinds of things. And one of the things that his friend says is, "Hey, I know how to get you to fly." And of course, he puts him in a Halloween costume, and the Halloween costume is, wings that angel wings, and they attempt it, and of course, what happens, that gravity pulls him down and he falls, he hurts himself. And that's when Mom walks in and can see him on the floor, but also see all the broken things that happen, the other stuff that happens as he's falling down. And that's where the limitations, you have to know you can't fly. So that's one thing you can't do, but there's so many other things that you can do. So don't focus on the fact that you can't fly. Focus on the things that you can do well. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea in that story was, she comments, never stop trying. She doesn't want him to stop ever. She doesn't want him to continue to try to fly, but to always continue to try, always keep trying, and just know that there's things that some of us can't do. And I think in reality that we can, as you said yourself, there are things that a lot of us would like to try something, but if we know that we can't do it, we shouldn't do it. If you know in your gut that you can't do that, then perhaps we shouldn't.
Yeah. Where can people go to find out more about Priscilla and Tux and find out about all the Tuxedo Baby books?
Yes. You can go to my website, which is www.family-zoo-productions.com. And there I'll have all 3 books. It talks a little bit more about it. There is a button there that can take you right to the Amazon page. I also have, when you go there, as I said, for each book, there are coloring pages, there are word finds, there are, curriculum, as I said, for teachers or even mothers who want to talk more about each of the books. And I talk I ask so many questions, and then they can refer to those. And then in the last book, I also added a page where, for teachers especially, it's about siblings. And this one says, if you had a brother, or what is your brother like? What is your sister like? And for those kids who don't, we put cousins. I put, a sheet in there about, well, what is your cousin? Explain to me about them. So there is lots of stuff in there that they can gather for more fun.
Wonderful. And we should mention that the first book in the series, Tuxedo Baby, is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. So check it out. Our video is on Victoria's website celebrating that achievement. And we know that all the books in the series are great fun and would be a great addition to your family library. Victoria, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Etane Raphael. She's returning to the podcast to celebrate her brand new book. It's called Rice to the Rescue. Is part of her Rumbly Tummy Adventures. A really fascinating story, and how this story came about is equally fascinating. It's a mission that you're going to want to be part of. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Victoria Smith. Please be sure to check out Priscilla and Tux. We also want to encourage you to visit our friends at clownswithoutborders.org. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Soji Franklin, and O'Leary. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.